supposed to be in here, Carl.
I knew this day would come. The day Bruce Wayne would be needed once again for some delicious Batman news. But more importantly, the Knight himself. Oh yeah, baby. It feels good to put this thing back on. Welcome back, citizens of Gotham. It looks here that we have our possible first reports of who the major villain, possibly even main villain, for the Batman Part 2 could be. Last year's The Batman was peak comic book fiction, so it only makes sense I would dress up again for his sequel. So what I'll be doing here for you guys is breaking down this article about the possible main villain for Robert Pattinson's The Batman, giving you some details on why this is both surprising, unexpected, could open some high roads for the Matt Reeves spin-off universe, or how it could be all a setup right now to possibly crush our dreams and give us something maybe we won't love as much. But I'm gonna need to hear from you Batman fans out there, okay? I'm not the only one repping Robert Pattinson. I know so many of you also loved that movie last year. Leave me your opinions on what you think about this villain. Do you think it is a good choice? Would you have liked somebody else? I know we were rooting for Mr. Freeze. Would love to hear all your thoughts down below. Now, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. It's probably gonna be difficult for you to take me seriously with this mess, so do you want to know my secret identity? Alfred, you lied to me. But okay, an article was published today by Deadline here titled "Beware Batman, Mike Flanagan pitches pick on DC villain Clayface to Warner Brothers." And at first it didn't even look like this would be any updates on the Matt Reeves Batman spin-off universe that is now Elseworld, not connected to whatever James Gunn is doing in his new rebooted DCU, with the article first stating that Dr. Sleep filmmaker Mike Flanagan has pitched a feature version of Clayface over at the studio. Several sources tell Deadline, however, no word on green light yet, and the studio has not said no. There are no offers and no deals. Though typically a DC supervillain in the Flanagan pick shouldn't move forward, he wouldn't be a bad guy, so we hear. And if you haven't heard of Mike Flanagan, I think he's an extremely talented horror director, has made some really good works both in movies and in TV shows. If he says he has an idea for a horror-themed Clayface solo movie, that's something I'd be down to check out. But then things get really interesting in this article, where in a couple of paragraphs down they say, that said, other sources are telling us that scripts are constantly changing and that Clayface is a big addition to Matt Reeves' The Batman 2. Let's wait until the dust settles here and something moves forward. It remains to be seen whether Clayface is a connection between The Batman 2 Elseworld and Gunn and Safran's feature and series spawning DC's Gods and Monsters Chapter 1. Basically saying, Mike Flanagan is pitching to DC a Clayface movie, but we've also heard Clayface is actually supposed to be the villain in the Batman 2. And this is Deadline, okay? Actual credible journalists, not scoopers online. If they're saying that their sources tell them Clayface is already supposed to be the villain in the Batman 2, it's more than a likely possibility it's actually going to be happening. We even had Mike Flanagan himself immediately comment on this story as soon as it broke online, where he said, response to Clayface, "The news today is entirely speculation. When or if something like that ever becomes real, I'll promise to tell you guys." And again, I think that's just him referencing the possibility of him directing a solo Clayface movie. Nothing really about the Batman universe having Clayface as a villain. Mike Flanagan wouldn't know anything about that. He's not attached to the making of the Batman. That's Matt Reeves, Robert Pattinson, those people at DC. So even if we're not getting a solo Clayface movie, it looks like there's a real possibility of Clayface himself being a major villain in Robert Pattinson's Batman. This is surprising. The main reason this is surprising to me is because it felt like Matt Reeves' universe was going very grounded, very realistic. You know, a lot like the Nolan trilogies of movies, where Nolan specifically picked villains that he can ground them into reality and make them plausible people in our universe. I mean, just look at what he did with Bane. That's not really the hulking, venomous Bane that we know from the comics. Even in interviews, Matt Reeves has talked about he's maybe dabbling and exploring the fantastical side of Batman Batman, but isn't entirely sure. I feel like if Clayface ends up becoming a villain, this is a good sign that Matt Reeves is like, fine, let's explore some more comic booky villains, and let's not make this world entirely grounded. And that to me would be music to my ears, because that's really what I would want. That's kind of why I'm excited for this Batman Brave and the Bold movie James Gunn is working on, you know? That movie is set to have Batman with a Robin sidekick, and I can bet you whatever supervillains pop up in there are gonna be fantastical villains. Villains with maybe supernatural origins or unexplained abilities that would be really hard to do in like the Nolan movies. But already imagining a Clayface, this shape-shifting monster who, if you're not too familiar with, he essentially started out in the comics as an actor who, when he found out that in Hollywood they were remaking one of his old movies, he grew jealous and furious that they didn't cast him in the role, that he took on the persona of his character Clayface and started killing people in the cast and crew. Now, admittedly, the original version of Clayface was just a regular guy putting on a mask with a knife, but then several iterations later through the comics and the animated series, Clayface became this gelatinous monster that can shape and form into different people, kind of really playing into that actor aspect of him. He gets a real kick out of trying to be the person he's shapeshifted into. I mean, one of my favorite things with Clayface is in the Arkham games, he pretends to be the Joker and is fooling Batman really well until he slips up in the game and Batman notices Joker would never say that and catches on that it's actually Clayface. One of the coolest Batman and Clayface moments ever. Just imagining what they could do now if they actually go the route of a shape-shifting being, not knowing where Clayface is, and then maybe at the end of the movie, him growing 10 feet tall. He doesn't have to be like roller coaster height or anything like that. I feel like that would be too much for the Matt Reeves world, but something within the limitations and stretching out the imagination would be awesome. But look, I did mention the golden age of Clayface is just a regular guy who's an actor. That could be the route Matt Reeves decides to go with Clayface here, making him just someone who makes masks out of clay and disguises himself in public and whatnot, which I'm sure Matt Reeves could pull off an awesome version of that and make him grounded and realistic, but just bringing it down to a guy in a mask killing people, that feels so similar to what Riddler was already doing in the last movie, a masked guy going in and killing people. I would be so disappointed if they really tried stripping away all that awesome stuff Clayface is about and going with the grounded take. And I say that hesitantly because if anyone can pull that off, it's gonna be Matt Reeves. I can pretty much bet he'll come up with a compelling story where I'll accept it. But it would be so cool to see them push the boundaries a little bit with this Batman. And again, we have to remember, Matt Reeves is on the campaign where he likes to have multiple villains in the movie, really flesh out his Gotham and his world. I know they're probably going to bring back Oswald Cobblepot here, Colin Farrell's Penguin, taking control of the criminal empire that Carmine Falcone left open. He'll be in charge now, and we'll see him in the Batman 2. No word if the Riddler would come back, and I understand if they don't. He's in Arkham Asylum. We were at one point supposed to get like a solo Arkham Asylum spin-off TV series that was secretly supposed to be a Joker show, where it kind of shows us his life in Arkham, maybe some details about how he encountered Batman for the first time, but it doesn't seem like they're that interested in telling a Batman vs. Joker story yet. I feel like that's maybe something they're leading up to with a third movie, and I'm perfectly fine with that. We've had enough Batman vs. Joker interactions. I kind of want to see new people take up the spotlight, like Clayface. So really, when it comes down to it, this is going to have to be a wait-and-see moment here. In the end, I really would have liked it to have been Mr. Freeze, because I feel like that's a version that you could do grounded with a little bit of fantastical in it making sense. It's just a scientist with this rare disease that also has a ray gun that shoots ice. That's not that crazy to think about. I bet that's something that could actually happen. Plus, the backstory with Mr. Freeze, I feel like it's such a no-brainer to do that story, but again, I trust Matt Reeves. He hasn't let me down yet. I'm excited to see this movie. October of 2025. It's still being said that they're going to start filming the movie at the end of this year, so that's why we're starting to hear reports about who the villain could be, what the story will be about, and so far, it looks like Clayface. Then again, they mentioned in the article, the script is changing. They're looking at other stuff. James Gunn might say, you know what? We're going to give him that solo movie in our universe. Matt Reeves, you're going to have to do something else. That could be a real thing that happens, man. That's why they had that meeting where they share each other's plans for their different Batmans so that they don't overlap and end up telling the same stories. But I throw it off to you guys. You hear about Clayface possibly being a major part of the Batman 2. Do you think they'll lean into the big blobby shape-shifting monster, or are they going to go grounded, realistic, and would you be okay with that? Anything, everything, be sure and like, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, Bruce Wait, out ya boy.